So again, what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you all the things you can do. I might highlight some data. There's a lot of data, but I'm going to show you how to get to data in a more efficient way without having to dig through all the data itself. But data is a huge part of Policy Map, but it's also a whole session in itself because there's so much data we could talk about how to use it. But my goal today is to show you how to use the tool and all of these other parts of the tool that might be of interest to use it. So we'll start with the basics first, and then we'll go to some really cool underlying features. And you're welcome to jump in and ask questions at any time. It's an open session, but we're going to try to cram a lot of stuff in here for you to use. All right, so the tool itself is really simple. It's a mapping tool by default, meaning that the goal of our tool is to visualize data. So the map itself is fully interactive. You can zoom in and out using the mouse wheel. There's some really cool navigation on the right-hand side here, which allows you to zoom in and out. You can do these really cool 3D maps. This is all for visual presentation. This is a really fun way to present a map. And if you do live presentations of data to people, it's a really powerful way to present data. And that's why we built a tool like this. The location bar on the top, though, works like a Google Maps. You can type an address. You can type in a zip code. So in the case of an address, it'll drop a pin in that location. And then from there, of course, you can pan to different parts of the neighborhoods. You can zoom in to get closer to street level. You can zoom out and such. It's pretty basic stuff. And again, the location bar also works like a search bar, but for geography. So you might not always have an address. You probably have zip codes, cities, counties that you're working in. So this allows you to do just that, type in a place like this, and then we can even go to Richmond. And then once you get to that place, the next step really is what you're trying to use Policy Map for, and that's adding data onto the map. And all that data is available in these categories above the map itself. There's a ton of data. I will not go through this with us in today's session. I'll send you this link in the top right-hand corner in the follow-up email, which will have the link to the recording. But the data directory link is a great place to start if you are not familiar with Policy Map and you just want to get an idea of what data we have in the tool. What it does here is that when you get to this table of contents section, this mimics the categories you'll see in the tool. So that way, if you want to find out something like what's in health data, it'll take you to the health section and tell you that we have hospital locations, community health centers, retail-based locations, then data sets related to health itself, which keep going. There's a ton of COVID data. Hopefully we'll one day pass this section. But then we'll get to data sets like vital statistics for birth, prenatal care, death, mortality. There's health indicators. What you'll find out is there is a lot of data in Policy Map. And what this page is trying to get to you is a very broad summary of some of these subcategories of the category you're looking at. So something like chronic conditions for us will tell you that in here you'll find COPD data, adults with asthma, adults with Alzheimer's disease, cancer and such. And then it'll tell you the years available for that data and geographies and so forth. It'll tell you where the source comes from. So it's just a really neat place if you just wanted to wander through what type of data, because there's a lot to interact with. And this is trying to give you this very broad summary. But within the tool, we try to put data in a category that makes sense. Hopefully you'll be able to dig through and understand some of these sometimes, but you can also use the data search on the left of the search bar. So that way you don't have to figure out where adults with asthma comes in. You can just type in something like asthma and it'll find all the different indicators that have that are related to asthma. Or something like if you're looking for adults without insurance information or insurance itself, you should spell correctly. This will give you a map then that shows the percentage of people that do not have insurance in this case. So the search bar on the left is pretty powerful because it allows you to search the metadata within our entire database of data, giving you the ability to hopefully try to find data that you're trying to use within the tool. When you pull data on the map, there is quite a bit of customization that we wanted to make sure users have. And the reason for that is that when you want to present data, sometimes you want to be able to control the message of that data. So if I use something like, let's say, health insurance as my base here. So the default in this case is telling us that, excuse me, anything in the dark purple is a census tract that has at least 13% of the adults without health insurance. But maybe our goal is to identify places that have extremely high percentage of people that don't have insurance, or in this case, on the other side of this, just the number of people. Maybe we're looking at the impact of the persons that we're trying to address. The legend allows you to control all that information. And that's really one of the things I always point out to users. So in this case, the year you can change for health insurance coverage. And then of course, the variable, which is how the data itself is being shown. So the default is the percentage of people that don't have health insurance. You can see the number of people that don't have health insurance. And then you can even see a percent change calculation between how that's changed. And with the ACA, this is a fantastic map because everything decreased of people that don't have health insurance because it helps cover a lot more people. So when you pull something like this, this now has the number of people that don't have health insurance. So now if you're trying to, instead of looking at the percentage of population, now you can actually look at numbers of adults that you're trying to address in needs of health insurance. And then from this map here, you can even do more things. You can simplify the map for your audience. So in this case, if you wanted to show this map and say, this is exactly what we want to look at, this is where there's a higher number of people that don't have health insurance on this map, isolating the ranges allows you to simplify the map for the audience that you're presenting the data to. And that's using the legend. And then the other part of this, you can actually even make your own ranges. So this allows you to say, I just want to do 3 ranges, and I want to make this high range really high, say over 1,000 people or so, or 1,500. And then from, my mouse is really finicky today. So with this, we can easily identify these 2 tracks that basically has over 1,500 people that don't have health insurance. And now if we're looking to create a program or identify these places to work with, now we have exactly just this place that we want them to focus on in that work. And that's really where the powerful part of the legend comes in, is that you have quite a bit of customization in the layers that you put on the map between the years, the variables, and even the geographies. So maybe you're not working at the localized level of the city. Maybe you want to pull this out and work at the state level. So this allows you to do a couple of really powerful things. You can change the value in the legends. You can change the aggregation. So now we're looking at county at the state level, but maybe you want to see something smaller, like zip codes for those areas. Or if you're looking at this at a legislative level, you can show data at congressional districts and such. You can start presenting this data at the legislative level. And so you can see some of these all blend together. So that just means you have the ability to make your own cut points to try to differentiate the different districts that are on the map. So the legend, if I can just always point out, the biggest takeaway is that there is a lot of customization in the legend. And it just depends on the data that you have on the map. But take a moment when you ever pull any type of data to use the legend to make those edits and those cuts changes. All right, I'm gonna go back into Richmond.
So Phil, most of the data, at least it's on screen, is goes to about 2019. How up to date is the data?
Yeah, it's a great question. So most of our data is federal data sets. We do have some proprietary data. So in the case of the census data, the most current update is the 2020 census, which means that this will be updated to 2020 ACS as well as 2020 decennial. There are some data sets that might not be as current. So some of the health indicators, because the CDC publishes, they're a little slower. So that's usually about 2019, 2018. There are housing data sets I don't think you guys use. You probably wouldn't use too much, but those have more current updates as well. Yeah, so any data sets you pull up, besides the data directory telling you the years available, you can always click onto the source link right here in the legend. And this will take you to what we call the data dictionary page. And all this is just for data nerds. But if you want to figure out more about the data itself and get more info, this will give you all the details by that source.
And the trustees have made a real commitment to racial equity. So does an instrument, a tool like Policy Map allows you to apply that sort of approach and perspective to the work?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Okay.
There's a fantastic, we do want to eventually make a general category of some of those racial equities, racial inequities sometimes that occurs. But if you just want to look at basic racial demographics and racial data, you can pull up the general data from the ACS and the census, which is, you know, the number of adults that are, number of persons that are Asian or Black or Hispanic and such. But you can also see these really neat indexes that we pull into the tool. So this allows you to create a map in this case. So instead of looking at one race at a time on the map, now you can see how the difference of Richmond is broken up based on the different predominant races in the areas. So anything in the green are areas that are predominantly Black, anything in blue are predominantly white, and then the Hispanic are the reddish colors. And so what you'll get are, you probably know Richmond well enough, you probably understand how the makeup of the city is separated like this. What you'll get are these really more identified places saying this is 90% of the adults here or the persons here are Black, but then these transitional census tracts, which means in this case, while the white population is the predominant race, it's not the majority, so it's less than 50% of the overall tract. So sometimes we call these transitional tracts, meaning that it's shifting based on the population changes in a given area.
You know, Albert, for your Black-Brown organizing work, I think a map like this is super interesting, right? Because at least it shows where there's some spatial proximity and mass, right? So to think strategically there about that. You're on mute, I think.
What kinds of so they're looking at this. This is great in terms of race and ethnicity, right? So is there a way to like layer on like education on top of that?
Yeah, that's that. I can show you how to do multiple layers, but there are other ways to look at some of the other racial inequities that could occur. It's under lending, ironically. It's mainly because the way we treat our lending data. But if you are familiar with the term redline or the redlining districts, so these are the Hulk boundaries basically in here. So this allows you to visualize how redline districts occurred in Richmond. And then you can sometimes see the correlation between the different demographics and how those two things appear next to each other.
You have that down to census tract. Can you do it by zip code?
In the case of predominant race, yes, you can change the aggregation of zip code in here. In the case of Hulk boundaries, though, the redline boundaries, they're mainly just a polygon or a boundary for us, the tool. There are some other variables in lending that might be of interest. This is mainly about inequity in loans in general. So that's the mortgage denial rate that occurs. And you can see that it's broken up by race as well. So lending does have a few things that might be of interest just for general inequity data, but demographics will give you overall numbers of persons and such. We do have income data that's available in there that might be of interest for that type of data, and then health is an overall calculation.
So Phil, one of our trustees, the chair of our program and evaluation committee and the chair of our board are both very interested in the racial wealth gap question. So what does an instrument like a tool like Policy Map offer when it's sort of beginning to learn more about that?
So, excuse me. So, I mean, probably the most efficient way to understand racial gap is the low mod calculations. Which is generally a calculation based on tract income to the overall metro or city that it's in. So what you're seeing here, this is usually this is a federal measurement as well. So HUD uses it to understand lending and places that qualify for federal programs. So what you'll see is places that are, oh, here you go. So what it's saying is this particular tract then is its median income is 40% less or comparative to the metro that it's in. So it's much lower income, and generally most federal programs, I think 80% is the threshold, and then below that is like lower poverty. So that's one way to look at it. It's just the low mod calculation itself. We did pull the Gini index in here, which is the really functional index. There's a whole wonkiness to it. If you ever pull up a data layer that you're not familiar with, you can always click onto this, and it'll give you either a description about the methodology, and then the dictionary page will give you a longer explanation. So that's one way to do it. The other one is under quality of life as well. And that is under, I believe it is, yeah, so it would be, that's a weird generalization. It would be a vulnerability index. This is a census calculation as well. And they created this social vulnerability index, and there's an overall score of the 4 factors that they created, but the individual ones to look at are really unique because this is social economic status. So this will give you a better description. So this is saying this particular measurement is measuring everything from federal poverty level, unemployment data, per capita, and then education as an index. So they use all those pieces of data to create an index to consider social economic status. And what it's saying is of that, the ones in purple are high risk of social economic status. And so you can use that index individually, or really need to be able to see them together as well. And then of course, things like minority status and language. So this is some basic stuff like, are they Hispanic, non-Hispanic population, Asian?
Phil, what might account for those outliers in some of those dark colored? So like, yeah, right where you are, the little tan and in the deep dark purple.
Yeah.
So if you go south, head south, right there,
yeah.
In that area, that tan inside that dark area right there.
Oh, you know what? Some of the stuff color that you see here is actually just what we call base maps. So it's parts, unfortunately. I apologize. Yeah, you can remove some of those things, and it will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
I thought maybe that was an outlier of some sort. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's odd map details. You can remove that.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, this little section here, resilience and social vulnerability index. It is odd that it's in the quality of life by itself, but this is probably some really neat indexes that if you just wanted to use and just better understand the challenges each neighborhood might face.
So the foundation is looking at doing more work around older adults and aging, right? And this is just an example. And Kendra Jones on our team is leading work around mental health. So if you have sort of broad categories, you want to work with populations over 65 who have reported incidences of depression, anxiety, or other, is there a way that this allows you to hone in on a question like that?
Yeah, let's do that. So
I figured a geek like you would have a way to think about it.
This is more to answer Albert's question, which is how do you overlay? Because there's so many ways to look at one layer at a time, and you probably want to see if there's correlation between some of these layers and how they overlap and such. So that is what we call the multi-layer maps. So the default layer, the tool you see here is called the single layer. And the goal of single layer is going to show you all these colors, and each color represents different values and such, right? The multi-layer, which is this button on the right corner, will flip the map and how it's displayed. And now instead of seeing multiple colors, it's going to see one color. And in this case, because we have this categorical data of minority status, we can say, I just want to show just high and moderate. So we'll deselect all and select these two, and now only tracks that are high and moderate minority status and language vulnerability as our example. So let's take this off. Let's do what you were just asking, Mark, which is let's look at age and maybe a health indicator and how those two things can correlate together. So we go to age and we go over 65. And now let's say we're trying to find an area that has a higher percentage of people over 65. So by default, it's 0 to 100. This is the range for this particular age group. And we can either slide the bar left and right or enter the numbers themselves. And so the map, while showing you one color, the one color is up to you to determine what that range is. So I can say, show me places that have at least, a third, 32%. So there's only one track that has 32%. So let's bring this down to, let's say, 20%. So now these are all the tracts that have at least 20% of the people living here are 65 or older. And then from this, I can say how many of these tracts that have this older population have people that are maybe have chronic conditions like, I believe a good one would be asthma disease. Well, we'll do something like heart disease or so. So the second layer that appears is also at 100%, but the 100% is 0.2% to 14%. So let's understand some of these data sets are also a methodology. So there's like a 0 to 100% calculation to it, like an equivalent. So again, from this, I can say, let's look at a place and try to find places that have a higher concentration, or at least 5%. So now only places that are over 65 and at least 5% of the adults have diagnosed with heart disease. And then from this, you can add another one and say, of these ones, which ones are, I think, medically underserved, MAUs. So how many live in a medically underserved area? So we can just look at ones that are not. And so only places in purple meet all three criteria of are they in a medically underserved tract? Are they in an area that have over 20% of the adults 65, and then are they in areas that have adults that have at least 5% of the adults with heart disease?
Can I then hone in on one particular area and do more layers?
You can. So the way the multi-layer works, you can have up to 5 layers. And the goal of this really is to do just what we're doing here is you're taking pieces of data and trying to see how they intersect with each other. So you can have to 5 to really kind of do that. And you're really limited to just the I guess the level of the data that you're looking at. So if you zoom in, you can try to see this data at the block group level. Maybe there's not block group level data for that. So you want to zoom out. So you can do this analysis at a regional level, or you can go down to a more localized level, but up to 5 layers is the goal.
So Phil, I realize it's 11:28 and the team has a lot on their plate, and as do you. This has been a super interesting primer, right? How do you think we should learn more about it in the summer after the team has gone through our very rigorous grants process right now? What would you recommend from a teaching point of view?
I mean, we have general sessions that we cover and such. I think probably the biggest takeaway is to go through and just use, you probably don't want to jump into the multi-maps right away, probably just go a single layer. But the goal is pull up a couple of layers that might make sense to you that you're trying to look at, that might be of interest, use the data search to get to that data. And then from that, hopefully it will give you some ideas of other data sets that might be of interest. And then we can really just shape a different session or just do something much more specific to your work that you're trying to pull. There's ways to download data in Policy Map. There's ways to upload data in Policy Map. There's ways to do some really neat joins where you're joining different data sets together. And the goal is to really produce a data set that you can use in your work.
Kendra, Michael, Lisa, Albert, before we sort of head off, any sort of questions? Or Michael, you leaned in and you had that look.
No, I don't have any questions at the moment. No.
Okay.
Thank you, Phil.
And I think, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, for anyone that just wants data in general, if you make this analysis in Policy Map, this kind of methodology, this multi-layer map, there's ways you can just get a report for that place. And what this is going to give you a chunk of data for that place. So if you want to get, let's say, a health report for this tract, what this is going to do is give you probably one of the coolest reports in the tool, but it'll give you all these health indicators that are on the tool itself into one gigantic summary. So everything.
You go ahead, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah. So everything from like health indicators to population and such. There's a lot of ways.
I do have one question, and you might have covered this, I'm not sure. Does it track the allocation of money, federal, state, and local sources?
There are some federal programs that we track where dollars go to. They're sometimes more specific. So you probably want to dig through federal guidelines a little bit.
Gotcha.
And see. Some of these are more federal programs that we participate in. Some are federal programs that dish out money, which include, I believe, these federal guidelines. So things like CRA eligibility, hub zones, and such as well.
Gotcha.
Is Policy Map a resource for the Invest Health effort?
Yes, we were the original.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And Michael, the reason I mentioned it is because when you think about the health equity zones in your trip,
Mhm.
that just some of the reports that Phil sort of briefly touched on, I think could be really interesting compliments as you learn more about the health equity zone strategy.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you.
And Kendra, you were interrupted.
Oh, no, I was going to ask, I believe I saw something and it may have be saved somewhere. I just don't recall. How can we get in this tool and play around with it a little bit?
Everybody should have a login. If you don't have a login, let me know. I'll make sure. I'll share the logins around, but I think everybody should have a login to get into the tool.
Yeah, we were sent logins.
Yeah, so if you don't have one, Kendra, I'll double check and then I'll resend you your login information so you can get in.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Phil, you have amazing energy. I mean,
Oh,
seriously,
thank you.
to make this engaging and fun is not a task for the lighthearted. So thank you.
It's hard when you're talking about data. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will explore. If we have questions about logins, and Gladys leads our team, and so she and the team will figure out what's the next learning sort of experience with you in the summer would be.
Awesome.
Everybody, it looks like we were sent, or I got an email on February 24th from Zen Gallagher, and it talked about needing to register. So you may not have gotten your login if you didn't register.
Okay.
Well, I'll send the login group.
That'd be
around.
great.
That way, whoever doesn't have a login, we'll make one for them.
That'd be awesome, Phil. Thank you for making it easy.
Yeah. All right.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.